In the heart of ancient Sri Lanka, a kingdom didn't just rise up, it was engineered, piece by meticulous piece. But its foundation wasn't built on gold or precious stones. It was built on something far more valuable, especially in the tropics, the complete and total mastery of water. So today, we're going to dive into the story of a truly hydraulic civilization, one that literally turned water into power. For the ancient kingdoms of Sri Lanka, this phrase wasn't a metaphor, it was literal truth. Water management wasn't just a side project for farming. No, it was the very foundation of their economy. It was the source of all their political power, and it was the absolute key to their survival through those brutal cycles of monsoon and drought. So, to really wrap our heads around this incredible achievement, we're going to trace its evolution. First, we'll look at the fundamental challenge they were facing. Then we'll follow the first ingenious solutions. And from there, we'll see an absolute explosion of mega projects. Then we'll see how it was all unified into one grand design. And finally, we'll talk about the profound legacy it leaves behind. Okay, let's get right into it. To understand the genius of the system, you first have to understand the problem they were trying to solve. And that problem was huge. The heartland of these early kingdoms was the vast, arid, dry zone of the northern plains. Just imagine the challenge here. You're trying to feed a growing population and build a thriving capital city in a region where the rain is brutally seasonal. You get drenched for a few months, and then it's bone dry for the rest of the year. There's just no way to build a civilization like that, unless you can capture every single drop from the monsoons and save it. For them, solving the water problem wasn't an option. It was the absolute first step. All right, so how did it all begin? Well, the first solutions started cropping up in the ancient capital of Anuradhapura, with a few visionary kings who began to literally reshape the landscape around them. Now, this wasn't some project with a single architect that was finished in a few years. Oh no, this was a multi-generational obsession. As you can see from this timeline, we're talking about a continuous, evolving effort that spanned more than 1,500 years. Each ruler didn't just inherit a system. They had a duty to expand it, to build on the foundations of everyone who came before. And the key thing to get here is that this grand island-wide system had really humble beginnings. The very first reservoirs, or vyuas as they're called, like the Abaya and Tisavyuas, they were pretty localized. They were built simply to keep the capital city supplied with water. Think of them as the crucial first building blocks of something much, much bigger. So they start with these city reservoirs, but from there, the ambition just explodes. This next phase is where we see this incredible burst of construction, transforming those singular tanks into a sophisticated island-spanning network, the real economic skeleton of the entire nation. Now, what's so fascinating about this is the clear escalation. Just look at the numbers here. You have King Vasabha, who builds 11 tanks. Fast forward a couple of centuries, and King Mahasen builds 16. A century after that, King Datusena and his successor are building 18 each. The ambition, the scale, the engineering, it was all just constantly growing. And this chart just lays it out perfectly, doesn't it? This wasn't about maintenance. It was about aggressive, relentless expansion. Each one of these great rulers made it their legacy to add significantly to this hydraulic infrastructure, which, of course, made the kingdom more resilient and a whole lot more prosperous. And just to give you a sense of the sheer scale we're talking about, during the Anuradhapura era alone, historical records show that over 65 of these massive reservoirs, these great tanks, were constructed. This wasn't just a feature of their economy. This network was the true backbone of it. And believe me, we are not just talking about digging big ponds. This was incredibly sophisticated civil engineering. King of Asaba built a canal that stretched for 40 kilometers. Think about that for a second. 40 kilometers with ancient technology. King Mahasen's Minaria tank is so vast, it's still a centerpiece of its region today. And while the north was the heartland, kings like Ilanaga were already expanding the system south into the Rohana region. Okay, so after centuries of just building more and more tanks, the whole focus shifts. Under one of the greatest kings in Sri Lankan history, Parakramabahu I, the goal changed. It was no longer about just building more, it was about mastering the entire system as one single integrated whole. And this slide just illustrates that strategic shift perfectly. The early Anuradhapura era, that was all about adding new pieces to the puzzle. But the later Polonnaruwa era, especially under Parakramabahu, was all about integration. He was restoring thousands of smaller village tanks and, crucially, linking everything together into one cohesive hydraulic machine.
This grand vision led to something truly breathtaking, the Parakrama Samudra, which means the Sea of Parakrama. And this wasn't just another big reservoir. It was a colossal man-made inland sea, brilliantly forged by linking several massive, already existing tanks. I mean, it was the ultimate expression of humanity's power to reshape a landscape for its own survival.
So after this journey of more than 1,000 years of engineering, from a single city pond to a literal sea of interconnected reservoirs, what is the lasting legacy of this incredible water kingdom? Well, ultimately, this system was so much more than just infrastructure. It was the entire framework of their civilization. It took an arid, difficult region and turned it into a lush, rice-growing powerhouse. It became the ultimate measure of a king's power and worth. And to this day, it stands as one of the most sophisticated and sustainable water management systems of the entire ancient world. And that kind of leaves us with a provocative thought for our own time, doesn't it? The story of Sri Lanka's water kingdoms isn't just a fascinating relic of the past. It's a powerful, timeless lesson in sustainability, in long-term vision, and in the profound wisdom of engineering in harmony with nature. It's really a blueprint for resilience written centuries and centuries ago.